We also have some questions from the audience, I think, and then I will also start with Joanne and Evantus, because there were some questions from Yoti Man and Avi Webb, both from Business Insider. And Yoti said, "Okay, tell me what we should writing about and looking into." And I think because one of your goals is also to really make this work visible. So, what could be topics where you think, okay, this is really important that the world knows?
That the biasness you're seeing AI having is very intentional from the tech industry. We are given tasks to do, and we are given commands on how we are supposed to work on these tasks. So if you see like being discriminative, or it being using like some words that you're not comfortable with, or sometimes like the misinformation, all of that is very intentional, because the quality check that goes through the AI and stuff like that is not, like, they are not that stupid to make even the littlest mistake to go through whatever it is you're doing. For example, in the remote task we are working, you have a first interactor of the task where we are called the tasker. From the tasker, it goes to a reviewer. From a reviewer, it goes to a super reviewer. From a super reviewer, it goes to the last person. And then that means like there's a whole chain of how quality is being checked. So the biasness that you're seeing is solely created by the big tech companies. I think that is a subject that the media needs to highlight. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also due to lack of regulations in most country, because it's not new, but the law is usually very slow to catch up to, say, the involvement of data work and the introduction of digital work. But what we found is that a lot of companies are trying to take advantage of that and actually getting away with it, because like in the example that we presented for remote task, we found that at first initially it was very good. I could work for 2 hours, get $10 and such, but they continuously degraded. So the amount of the level of work before, it was just draw a car, draw a person, draw a tree, draw a house, that's it. And then it goes into details. Is this person walking? Is this person a child? Is this person an adult? Are they slouching over? If it is a car, does it have the indicator on the left or the right? Is it on? Is it off? At every frame. So the complexity of the work went from something I can do for 2 hours to something that would take me about 20 hours to complete. But then you'd find through the process they've created of quality, they would say that, for example, I did not pass on quality, and then they would not pay me for the work that I did. So you find that I have, say, a list of, it can go anywhere from, it can go up to 1,000 tasks I did in a week, but none of them were paid, or some of them were paid and we actually got paid $0.0001 for something that I put in a whole day. And we find that through the nature of work that we are doing, we found that we usually work, it's mostly 20 hours, 18 to 20 hours for each worker for 6 days a week. And usually, even if someone got paid something like $10 or $20 for that whole week, it feels like, hey, you actually achieved and you actually made something decent. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I need to have a conversation. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry, Hoven. um, for workers in Kenya working in platforms like Appen and Toloka and all those chat crowd sourcing and stuff like that. We like, it's advertised from the companies like, oh, this is a data annotation project and stuff like that. But once we get to that platform, usually you can't get the jobs. But for us, we get like, you're supposed to take a photo of children doing cartwheels, or like very queer positions. Does that apply to the people you spoke to?
Yeah,
Because for us, even you're told like specifically tone black people, like they are very specific
yeah.
with the requests.
Provide videos of a child between the age of 5 and 10 doing cartwheels, running, um, such things. So for us, it's usually data collection, but it's not data annotation from most of
Yeah.
the big companies like Appen, Tellus,
Yeah.
such. Yeah.
So we sort of saw like there's a difference in the content that is being brought in this side as compared to Tellus working in Germany, and Appen working in the States. Like, it's totally different. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I think that's largely true. That it's very different. Also because a lot of tasks are very language based these days. So if you're, for example, annotating for, I don't know, self-driving cars that need to speak like Portuguese, you need Portuguese workers, or at least speaking workers. Or what we also find, for example, Clickworker is a German based company, and they hire mostly Germans there. So also the work apparently that they outsource is pretty local in a way. Yeah. So, but I also spoke to a worker who was based in Africa, but somehow with a VPN made it look like he was based in Europe. And I asked him, like, how different are your tasks now? And he said the only difference is the pay. So that seemed that he still had similar like tasks, micro tasks to do on those platforms, but he just got better
But
paid.
I
sorry,
think
but
because we,
that,
yes, really short.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, but that would actually depend on the platforms. You see, we have a lot of platforms working in the space, and they all operate differently. I think it is true. The biggest difference between most of the companies abroad and here, it's usually pay. But when you talk about pay, it's like I'm working on remote task. I get paid what $0.01. So I just have to multiply that by a number that would make sense for me. So say if I did 5,000 tasks, then I would qualify to get say $50. So it's kind of they've created a model to kind of overwork people. But then when people in Africa are able to access the exact same work that is the exact same thing, we find that one, in Africa we have higher targets. So it's just that we don't have time. I would have shown you a screenshot where I have to hit a target of 95% so that I can get paid. But it's not the same for someone in abroad. And then someone in abroad gets paid say $30 an hour
For labor
for the same job. So
and
uh,
good quality.
if I put in 20 hours in the US at $30, you're talking about 600. Is that 600? Yes, it's $600 per day. But then after working the same period of time for a whole week, I can only make say $20 because it's not everyone will be able to put in the 20 hours. So I think that's why there's a lot of talk from the tech companies says there's a lot of fraud because if I can bypass their systems and work from abroad, then I would try and do that because you can see how much the gap is when I'm doing the exact same work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, perfect. So thanks all for this contribution, and I think so. What I think what we all learned is also the diversity of the workforce and the conditions and everything behind a topic that looks quite dense, but there are lots of different variables there intact, and also think to the question on to go where should you write on. So I think about going behind the framing of the tech companies and really talk to the people who are doing the work and really learn about the different variables to really understand what's happening there, and also share this also with the world. That would be also my advice in that. So Joanna and Evantis, but also Klaartje, thank you very much also for this contribution. And also happy to have the discussion later on. By the way, the webinar will close at 4:30 CET, but we will leave the room open for half an hour for further discussion. So also feel free to hang around for some time. Then we go to the next topic. So why and for who is it a problem? Of course, what we now really saw that's the problem. What we now discussed is really on the workers and worker conditions, and also talk about legislation. I think, and maybe not only new regulation, but also enforcement of existing legislation would also really help a lot. What we also saw, of course, with the platform work discussion we had previous at different webinars we organized. But I also want to ask Klaartje and Antonio to talk about shortly about, okay, so why and for who is it a problem? And we're going to talk about the problem of bad labor conditions on the quality of AI, but also on the liability of the companies that are using these AI. So I also want to know if you can also highlight Antonio and Klaartje, then we can have this brief discussion. And then I can also brief a bit. So
Klaartje, okay, ready.
yes, perfect. Thank you very much. So first, Klaartje, so why could this be a problem for the quality of AI? I know you have some examples that's really, so we're not going to give answers, but some examples on, okay, so why we should think about this.
Well, I think first of all, because every worker deserves decent work. So in itself, it's important. If you look at, for example, fair work based on the International Labour Association and other sources, based like 5 different pillars of decent work, and I don't think it's adhering to any of them, this type of work. So I think that is important in itself, first and foremost, but then also for the quality of labor, because we just know from organizational psychology, organization studies, etc., that if people do not have decent work conditions, the work will suffer from that. So I think that's for me the most important thing. But the other, although I also have to say, all the workers that we spoke to, I felt like they were very much committed to this work, more than I would expect if I looked at those working conditions. I would kind of expect that you can kind of slack your way through it, but not at all. People were like, trying to read the tasks very carefully, and we asked people to do a task with us for our understanding, and we're very serious about the work. But then a few examples. So what we heard, for example, were people that had to annotate like more medical data. So a lot of different domains and sectors data, of course, is annotated, and you can in some sectors that can be more harmful than in others, and you can do it for accounting, and a lot of tasks that we saw, for example, is also receipts, and then digitalizing receipts, written receipts. Well, that's maybe for accounting programs or so, but that I don't see a big problem there. But for example, if you have to annotate like clips from medical practices and surgery, and say how the surgeon is doing, then I think that might be problematic in the end for the products that will be delivered. And also, and that in itself, I don't find that so much a problem, but I think it might also have an effect on language, right? Because if you're outsourcing to global majority countries, mostly old colonies, then of course, like say the Netherlands, like 350 years ago, we spoke the same language in South Africa, but that of course became a totally different language, or at least with a lot of differences. So that might also have an influence on, in the end, on language. But these are the things I encountered while doing this research.
Okay, thanks. And Antonia, also about the liability issues, because in the end, when the data doesn't fit the targets, then things go wrong.
Well, okay, let me first of all follow up on what Klaartje introduced in the discussion, because these are very important points that she emphasized. I would say that, for instance, the reason why we do not see these workers slack their way through these tasks is that the platforms are so organized that if workers are not performing to the best of their competencies and possibilities, their accuracy rate drops and their tasks are refused, meaning they are denied compensation. Joan and F can really attest to it, because workers live and die by the accuracy rate, and this is common to many platform workers. I mean, the same thing goes for, I don't know, Uber drivers. If they do have not an accuracy rate but a reputation score that drops under 4.6, they they're excluded. And then the other point is that, yes, I mean, this data point and indicate that there has been a sea change in the way we produced AI. We produce AI, and this sea change happened some 20 years ago. I was noticing in the chat, for instance, Krista was insisting on the fact that she evaluated surgeries, but has zero medical knowledge. Because this is something that is possible now, because this AI training is based on large data, bodies of data, and we want to have, the companies want to have a normal distribution of replies to their tasks. If they have a normal distribution, they can concentrate in the average and exclude the rest. So they don't need experts. They don't need people who are sublime, experts in a field. They can have a crowd of people who are not experts and have them train and have, on average, have the right answer. This is mainly the point. Now, what does it mean in terms of quality? That quality is difficult to assess by the companies themselves. The only thing that they can do is train and retrain constantly this data. So this circle never stops. This work is never going to disappear. This is the problem. If the situation stays like this, what can we do to make the situation change? Well, sometimes leverage the existing laws and sometimes introduce policies that are effective. So, for instance, this is where liability comes handy, and Martijn probably was insisting on it. Liability is important because we do have to take to keep these companies, the AI companies, accountable for what happens all along the supply chain. What happens in Kenya is relevant to somebody in Texas or in California. How much or how little people are paid in Indonesia is relevant to the quality of the AI that is produced somewhere in Amsterdam. Now, what can we use? We do have a few tools, in Europe in particular. We do have the GDPR, which is about regulating private data. We do have a platform work directive that was adopted last year that can be applied to micro workers, data workers, ghost workers, call them however you will. And then there is, and most importantly, in my opinion, the due diligence directive that was adopted last year again. And this is basically a directive that establishes that if you are a European company of a certain size, and if you want to outsource a certain business process, in this case, the annotation of data and the production of AI, you are responsible of the human conditions and the working conditions and the environmental conditions of what happens all along the supply chain. So again, this is one way of saying that if you are, I don't know, L'Oréal in France and you want to develop your own AI and you do this by outsourcing crappy jobs in Madagascar, you are responsible with what happens in Madagascar.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So I think this is also a topic that also really needs to put more on the agenda, and also a topic I always ask when people are working about AI for the companies on LinkedIn. I always ask, okay, and what about the labor? And then most of the time it's quiet. But yeah, it's important to address this. So thanks both for this part of the contribution. Thank you. If you want to ask for Johan and Evantus, what is your ambition for the Data Laborers Association in the end?
Yeah, so we wanted to do a more collective centric sort of solution for data workers. We are focusing on the future. We want to be involved in policy and advocacy, where we are bringing to light the injustices done by these companies. We've been very fortunate to meet some key stakeholders in the industry who are putting us together with stakeholders in government, which will allow us to present our case to policymakers, especially with the proposal on the business law amendment that is going to include digital work, and therefore we get to give our input and the input of workers working in the data worker space. So that will allow us to be part of the conversation and maybe hopefully enable regulations that would protect the workers. But then looking back on, that is for the future, but looking on the damage that's already been done, our key thing is we want to do mentor workshops. So we find that due to the nature of work where people are working very long hours, people develop, mental problems where you're sitting at your desk, you're consistently working, have no interaction with people, you're completely isolated, and then all this effort, but it's not turning into things that allow you even to cater for even the basic needs. And that leads to a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. Sometimes the nature of work, like you said, dead bodies, pornography. And imagine looking at pornography for 20 hours for close to a week, and then we're doing the same project for a whole month. You can see the sort of effects we have on people, the same for dead bodies. So we ideally the service is very expensive to cater for from the person's pocket. But if we can do that as the Data Labelers Association, then we'll be able to provide that as a service. So where we pay for the expert, then workers can get that service for free. Our other silo is for community building, like the presentation that was done, where they said that when they set up an office where people got to work in a community for 2 days, that people are very happy. So what we want to do is we want also to create community engagements where people do come, and we have team building exercises and sort of where people get to interact. I give this funny example where I actually met someone when I was a trainer in 2020, and we've been talking ever since, and we are very good friends. But because we are so used to working in our houses and being isolated, we've never really met. And I met him, I think it was last week. And what happened is, I've talked to this person and know about his life story so much that I have this image of what that person looks like. But then I meet him and he doesn't look like the person. So it's like I know this person, but I don't know who I'm looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that kind of interaction and bringing the people together could actually help. Do you guys know about the lady who passed from Teleperformance?
No.
Yeah, there's a lady who was a content moderator who worked at Teleperformance, and we don't know for sure, but the talk is that maybe it was due to all the challenges around the nature of work that she was doing is what led her to take her own life. And we felt that maybe if she was getting the right assistance, or if she was part of a community, maybe she would have gotten the right assistance to get her to get through whatever she was going through. Or if not, maybe she would have been part of a community where when she interacts with other people in the same field, they sort of see like, hey, I'm not alone in this, and therefore maybe would have gotten some sort of relief through talking to someone who they
Yeah.
could be in the same sort of
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really important really to really build this community that you can also support each other, and then
Yeah.
also stay much stronger. And also last question is also what kind of support do you need? Because you're now busy for a while with the Data Labor Association, and also how can also attendees also of this webinar support your work?
Um, we want to. Okay, a lot has happened where we are talking to a lot of stakeholders. We do appreciate journalists because they help us get our name out there. We want to do publications where we're in touch with researchers who are doing projects that at least do say that they are working in collaboration with data labelers. It helps us in terms of getting seen. But then on a deeper note, we are actually searching for partners to help us with the silos. When you talk about mental health, we are a worker-led association that consists of 10 core members, but all the people present are workers. Therefore, when I talk about we want to do this mental support, for example, we don't have the funding to do that. We don't have the expertise to do that. And we also setting up the project and all that, we do have the idea of how we want it to look like and what we want to do with it. But when it comes to funding, actually getting the expertise, how to know who the right expertise and things of that nature is where we feel like we would need assistance on all sides. So when
Yeah.
you talk about community development, when you talk about the mental workshops, and then when we talk about policy and advocacy, we're just looking for strategic partners who can help us be able to do that at a larger scale, for example. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, perfect. So maybe you can also share the contact details also in the chats, so people can also contact you both over there.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. So I have one last speaker, Krista Polowski. She wasn't on the list, but we had contact via Blue Sky, and we had a nice conversation. And so I asked, okay, so maybe it's also nice to hear some more about your story. So it's nice also now seeing you here on video after direct messages on Blue Sky, because I think I, like many others, left Twitter a while ago. So you are also a data worker, active in worker advocacy, and also a organizer on Tergupticon. We're now also looking about, okay, so what are the intervention that can create solutions? Can you maybe share something about your experience? Yeah.
So as far as solutions go, I think I'm in a unique position being in America. We are part of a coalition that works really hard towards policy, and that might sound like it only helps Americans, but most of these major tech companies are based in America. So if we can get them to have to comply by certain laws, the impact can go all over the world. Of course, with the current administration, that has become a very difficult fight, but when that doesn't mean you stop fighting. We're still working on that. Um, and we try to get workers to ban a lot of the people in our position, they're independent contractors. So they don't have a job, they don't have an office that they go to, they don't have like health insurance or anything. So they think they're lucky that they get even the little bit of work that they get. And so trying to get the workers to be motivated to want to fight for better treatment is sometimes a very big struggle. But like I said, we're trying to we're trying to refocus currently back on the worker and kind of touch base with everybody again to see what they really want us to be fighting for. So we're not just making up our own mind and not fighting for what the worker wants, you know?
Okay, interesting. And so can you also maybe give an example, maybe from the past after Gropticon? So what concrete action or tooling you then developed or project you did that could be as an example on how you can also by collectively organizing workers and providing tools to create not a more level playing field, but a less less disbalance in power, let's say like that way.
So one of the biggest things in how Turkopticon actually started is we do reviews on Amazon Mechanical Turk of the requesters. And because workers don't have any protection, a requester can put a job on this platform and decide that they don't want to pay you. And not only do you lose your time, you lose the money you should have earned, but you get a negative mark on your account. And if your account falls below a certain approval rating, you can't effectively work anymore. So Turkopticon started this review platform where workers could review, like if they get rejected from somebody, they can put it on this site so other workers can see, oh, this person rejects works, you know, maybe I want to stay away from them, or this one pays really well, or this one communicates poorly. And that to this day is probably the most useful thing Turkopticon has done. We have managed to get some contacts within Amazon to encourage them to look at banned and suspended accounts because like remote tasks, they can just take your whole account away and you lose everything. And we try to keep the lines of communication open with Amazon basically and say, you know, here's some workers that we think you may have not meant to ban them. Can you have another look at the account? But again, our reviews are our biggest asset, I think, to the worker.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So thanks for joining in for a couple of minutes in here. And I think this is also a topic that we're going to address maybe in a future webinar on how to really create worker resistance within platforms by providing digital tools. So I think we will come back on it later. And I think also one question also from Isabella Biletta here in the chat about, okay, so how confident can we be so on what buttons do we need to push when we know that some companies just don't care? And how can we find companies? Because in the end, in the whole stakeholder landscape, there are always people that care. And I think we need to find them and also give them then the stage. So thank you very much for joining this quickly, and also nice meeting you on Blue Sky.
Nice meeting you too.
Thank you. And then I will give the word back to Fiona for the last 9 minutes of the webinar, where we're going to do some more Q&A. There are some questions in the chats. And Fiona will do this moderation part of the last part. So it's up to you again, Fiona.
Thanks a lot for time, and thanks a lot to all our amazing speakers. I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we had a lot of questions in the chat and a lot of also information sharing from many people. So I wanted to use this time still that we have together to give people the floor to share some of their own experiences, like Krista just had, or yeah, if anybody would like to share something themselves or still ask a question to Joanne or to Klaartje or Lydia, please do so. I think Brooke, perhaps you also want to share your own experience being a data worker yourself as well. Please feel free to come in if you want to. Otherwise, Isabella, you've been quite active in sharing some of your perspectives. Perhaps you would like to share as well. And we can also remove my spotlight perhaps and just be together with all of us if you would like to yeah, give some more people the floor if they would like to share or answer some of the questions in the chat that you feel like haven't been answered yet.
Okay. Okay. I am
Yeah,
Isabella.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this interesting discussion. As we, in a way, as we know, data workers are an example of what contingent work has been through since ages. What is now a bit more difficult to address even is the digital part of the relationship. And I saw in the chat some people asking what kind of contract these workers have. And sometimes they don't have a contract. They don't have any real relationship. And if we speak about even the platform workers like riders, sometimes they have an employment relationship through an account from someone else. So it's the complexity that Antonio was and some other people were stressing, the complexity of knowing who is your employer really, or who are you complaining to, is demultiply by this digital aspect. And this is one point that is quite crucial here and very difficult. The other aspect, this was my point on the pool of workers. Companies are not really interested in these individuals that are working, even data workers. They are interested in having someone doing the task they want to do. And they have plenty of people out there that are, as even Krista was saying, hoping to get on this platform, to do something to get some remuneration. This is a point that is this pool of people that are able to come in at whatever condition is really the point here. And another point is how we can really point on company or pin on companies their liability. And this is difficult, really difficult.
Thanks, Isabella. I think it's noted. And I also think it's important, and that's reflected back into what Krista, but also Lydia has shared, is to both organize, but also make workers more aware of their rights that they have. Because they are, especially what John had shared, that this is not a new field, and labor laws do apply to people within those countries, especially what Antonio said. If you're a worker with a contract or even with a different type of contract in Madagascar, the laws of Madagascar apply to you. So the labor laws should apply, and you are yeah, you need to be able to uphold companies to that. If there's nobody else who would like to share some final thoughts, Antonio, of course, please go ahead.
Sorry, because you have conjured my name, Fiona. Anyway, no, I just wanted to provide some elements and some insights from the contractual side of it, because we have mentioned a number of different situations. People, like it was Claudius inside, people who do it as a side job. In the case of John and F, this wasn't the main job. The situation changes from country to country, and it is true that it's always platform work, meaning that somewhere there's always a platform, even if people do not always work from home. Because if you are in low-income countries, you have to find a place where you can access internet properly, and where, I don't know, sometimes electricity is working properly. Anyways. This also means that the contracts that these workers have change a lot. Sometimes we encounter people that have like a monthly contract. Sometimes we encounter in the same country, in the same company, people that are hired for 2 days, 1 day, 5 days. And sometimes we do encounter a lot of people who are paid by piecework, meaning that they're paid by task. This is probably the case that has been studied the most, because it started with Amazon Mechanical Turk, which was arguably the first platform that pursued this kind of piecemeal situation. But it's not always the case. Now, the thing that we have to recognize is that platforms work with anything goes philosophy. Basically, they will adopt any kind of contractual setup that is most advantageous to them. So sometimes we can leverage the law when we have contracts to have the contracts respected. Sometimes we have to find more, let's say, innovative ways of addressing the problem, and sometimes come up with new. In sociology, we call it repertoires of contention, meaning tools that people who put in place collective action have at their disposal. So sometimes we have to invent new tools. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Antonio. I think it's keep on talking about the type of contract that workers have and improving those, as well as keep on talking about pay. This is something that we've seen in the discussions we've hosted often about the gig economy, is that because they have a different contract type, all of a sudden we cannot talk about their pay and their income. And here again, this is something that we need to talk about. And I think from our perspective as well, we should not go into the frame of something that these are a new group of workers that we need to treat differently, but rather we need to keep on focusing about how can we improve their working conditions and their pay. Just to finalize the discussion of today, I would like to highlight one more question that was asked in the chat from MB to Joan and Ephantos as well, about something that was shared around how if the quality of your output is not good enough or considered good enough, and then pay is refused. Have you noticed any spillover of this in the BPO centers, which supposedly tend to have employment contracts with workers? Is that something that you've experienced and can share something about?
BPOs operate in a different sort of way, in the nature that they offer pay. It's like you have a monthly pay. It's usually a contract. They can give you a 1 week contract, 2 weeks contract, a 1 month contract. Pay is usually structured, but it's very little. So what they do is they sort of, okay, a company like Cloud Factory will pay me the same wage as a watchman, for example, not to degrade the pay or the job that the watchman does, but when you look at the requirements they give, it's like you need to have a degree in mathematics, you need to have a degree in architecture, you need to have a degree in this. But then they know that you do not have a job, and therefore they tell you, we'll pay you the same salary equitable to a house manager, or a house manager, I mean the person, or a nanny. I don't know what's the best. It's like it's a very informal sort of job that doesn't require any form of education to do, but then they give you salary that is equitable to their pay. And what the narrative they use is that, hey, you're just here to sort of just have something to do before you find whatever other job you want to do. Yeah, so that's they kind of pay you that, and then they say if you're not comfortable with it, you feel free to leave. But they know that you're trapped when you get in the system. Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
remote tasks, guys used to complain, file tickets until now they give up. Now and they whole now give up the whole thing, tasking plus the platform. So you've worked, but you never earned anything. So you just despair and leave.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks a
and
lot.
yes, sorry, but
Go ahead.
so what happens also when people start to complain? Because I'll give you an example. We are doing a conversion of say $1 to about 128 Kenya shillings. So when I'm paid $20,000, 20,000 Kenya shillings, that's about $150 thereabout. But then you find that almost half of that just goes to transport, going to the workplace. So you can see how insignificant the amount that they're paying you is. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I also wanted to mention something like off the grid, but I just wanted to highlight. So there are usually like the monitoring apps that are installed in our cameras. Like when you're working, they just want to make sure like you've not given your account to anybody or stuff like that. So all despite your machine being personal, it is installed this monitoring app where it's supposed to remain on and it cannot be uninstalled from your machine unless you format your machine or stuff like that.
Mm.
So like they are also, apart from you giving your input when you're working, you're also giving them your personal data, for example.
Because they also work with webcams
Yeah,
on the
with
whole
the,
time,
yeah,
and they're working for
Yeah.
20 hours a week, and you live in a single room,
yeah,
so they can basically collect data about your entire life.
yeah.
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 And yeah, and also in the single room aspect, so most of us, from what you're earning, you can't afford to live in a fancy house or one bedroom house or stuff like that. It's just a single room.
Mm.
So you're given a project that has porn, and you have your family, your kid is there, your husband is there, so you're not even comfortable in your own space working in these projects. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
No.
something I also wanted to highlight, affecting the mental state of people, and even how we are supposed to relate, because again you have these NDAs you signed, you're not supposed to
Mm.
discuss even your spouse what you're doing, so it eats you up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys, for sharing that. I just want to be mindful of everybody's time, also because, especially for Lydia, it's in the middle of the night now. So I would suggest that we stop the recording now, Shantanu. So we have the 1.5 hours of this. And please feel free to jump out of this webinar if you need to. Like we mentioned in the beginning, we